In 1954, a traveler disembarked from a plane in Tokyo, and with him, reality seemed to fracture. He held a passport from a nation no one had ever encountered before. Officials were taken aback. The maps didn't show this place. History made no mention of it. Yet the documents were authentic. For years, the tale of the man from Taured was passed along like folklore, until evidence began to surface proving the unthinkable. Not only did he exist, but what unfolded afterward was more terrifying than anyone could have foreseen. This isn't a typical mystery. It's a haunting peek into something humanity was likely never supposed to uncover. On a humid July day in 1954, what seemed like an ordinary arrival at Tokyo's Haneda Airport quickly evolved into an event that would leave officials puzzled for generations. Amid the continuous stream of businessmen, tourists, and diplomats moving through immigration, one individual caught their attention. Impeccably dressed, with a black briefcase in hand, he spoke fluent French and Japanese, all in a distinct European accent. Outwardly, he appeared to be a seasoned traveler familiar with crossing international borders. But what happened shortly thereafter would trigger a series of events so bizarre and deeply disturbing that many would later question if he had ever truly belonged to our world. He handed over his identification without delay, calm, self-assured, and courteous. His passport appeared valid, complete with visas from multiple European and Asian countries. But the customs agent hesitated when he examined the origin listed. The passport claimed the man hailed from a place called Taured, a country that didn't appear on any map or exist in any historical archives. Initially, officials assumed there had been an error, perhaps a translation mistake or a printing typo. But the traveler calmly and firmly insisted that Taured was indeed a real place. In fact, he seemed somewhat insulted that they were unfamiliar with it. When pressed for more detail, he confidently pointed to a map, placing his finger between France and Spain in the area where Andorra is located. But instead of recognizing Andorra, he became clearly agitated, asserting that Taured had been established there for over a millennium. Though they tried to maintain composure, airport personnel found themselves facing a situation that defied logic. The man's accompanying documents, his driver's license, professional credentials, even his checkbook, all pointed to Taured as his homeland. Each item bore an identical and perplexing emblem, one none of the customs officers had seen before. Concerned, they might be confronting an elaborate fraud or some form of criminal ruse. Authorities proceeded to interrogate him further. Despite this, the man's story remained entirely consistent. He spoke with assurance about his employer, mentioned European branches he had worked with, and described existing banking connections. Officials contacted the company he claimed to be meeting in Tokyo. It existed, but no one there had ever heard of him. They also reached out to the company he stated he worked for in Taured, but there was no trace of such a business. It was as though he had stepped out of a parallel universe, one eerily similar to ours, but not entirely the same. To eliminate the possibility of mental illness, authorities asked a physician to assess him during questioning. The medical professional deemed him mentally sound, articulate, and visibly more puzzled by the ordeal than anyone else present. His attitude revealed a man who truly believed every word he said, and who became increasingly distressed as the world failed to align with his recollections. With no crime to charge him with, yet unable to permit him to go freely, officials placed the man under supervision in a hotel room while they dug deeper into his background. As he was being escorted to his temporary lodging, he reportedly told a guard that he had passed through Tokyo many times before without trouble, and couldn't understand why this time was any different. His words were quiet and almost melancholic. He couldn't have known it would be his last chance to speak on the matter. As strange as his arrival had been, what came next would unravel any rational explanation. Airport authorities assumed they were dealing with a bewildered traveler or a case of mistaken identity. But they were mistaken. Profoundly mistaken. The real enigma hadn't even started. At first sight, his passport appeared flawless. It was crafted from the same materials used for authentic European documents: complete with expected seals, stamps, and watermarks, even under ultraviolet light. Everything appeared normal. The stamps alone painted a fascinating picture: documented entries and exits from France, Spain, Germany, and even 2 earlier arrivals into Japan, all within the past 5 years. Each stamp was consistent with the official styles and timeframes used by customs agencies during that period. Still, there was one glaring issue at the core. None of it should have been possible. The country that issued the document, Taured, wasn't acknowledged by any known nation, absent from every treaty, and missing in all historical references. Determined to uncover a logical reason, airport personnel brought in experts on document, fraud, and forgery. If this passport was indeed fabricated, then it was a work of rare brilliance. Every detail supported authenticity, from the unusual but consistently spelled name Taured to the corresponding dates and official endorsements on the visa stamps. The more the materials were examined, the more the con artist theory began to fade. Every expert found the document flawless. What they held was something that defied possibility, a perfectly legitimate document from a non-existent country. Further, mystery came from the man's wallet. It was packed with various European currencies, French francs, Spanish pesetas, German marks, all authentic and all valid during that time frame. His checkbook featured a bank name no one could authenticate, yet the ink, formatting, and paper quality mirrored legitimate European banks. He also had a business card, printed flawlessly in Japanese, for a company that did exist, though there was no employment record linked to his name. Each item seemed to confirm his story, even as reason argued against it. Officials deepened their investigation. They contacted embassies, combed through missing persons databases, and reached out to local and international police. Not a single trace of him could be found. His fingerprints returned no matches. His handwriting was flawless, neatly crafted and steady, showing no nervousness at all. The only strange thing noted was how incredibly calm he stayed throughout everything. Unlike others who might panic when faced with accusations of forged papers, the man from Taured seemed truly baffled that anyone would question his authenticity. In fact, to him, it appeared as though the strange, alien element was not himself, but the world around him. Throughout the night, officials argued over the next steps. Some suggested letting him go with a stern warning, dismissing it as an elaborate but harmless hoax. Others disagreed. Too many aspects of this case refused to follow any known logic. In the end, caution won out. Authorities arranged for him to be held temporarily in a secured hotel near the airport. Guards were placed at his door, and plans were made to resume the interrogation the following morning. Before he was taken to the hotel, one immigration officer, perhaps feeling a touch of sympathy, asked if there was anything he needed to make the stay more bearable. The man gently shook his head and gave a faint, weary smile. "This will all be cleared up by tomorrow," he said, seemingly reassuring them as much as himself. In that instant, his composure seemed unshakable, almost unsettling in its quiet conviction. But the man from Taured would not see tomorrow. At least, not in this world. When authorities returned to his room the next day, they were met with something that challenged reality yet again. What had started as a strange documentation issue was now evolving into something far beyond legal boundaries, international rules, or rational understanding. If his arrival had caused confusion, his vanishing would plunge the situation into complete mystery. The disappearance of both the man and every piece of proof. The hotel chosen was basic yet secure, selected specifically for its proximity to the airport, so officials could keep tight control over the matter. 2 guards were assigned to monitor his room overnight, given orders not to interact unless absolutely necessary. Another officer watched over the single hallway leading in and out. There was no balcony, no fire exit, no open windows, just one locked door. He had nowhere to escape. Inside the room, the man remained quiet. He accepted a small meal from hotel staff, offered polite thanks, and didn't say much else. He seemed tired, perhaps worn out, but still completely confident that the situation would resolve itself by morning. From what anyone could tell, he had calmly settled in for the night. The night passed without disturbance, and then, sometime between midnight and daybreak, he vanished. The guards stationed outside reported hearing nothing unusual. There were no noises, no rattling doorknobs, no soft footsteps echoing through the hallway. When immigration officers arrived early that morning to escort him back for additional questioning, they discovered an empty room. The bed had clearly been used, yet there were no signs of any conflict, no broken locks, no tampered windows. His few personal belongings, the passport, different currencies, a checkbook and business cards, had all disappeared, as though they'd been swept away with him. Panic took hold almost instantly. The guards insisted they had never left their idol. Posts and security logs verified there had been no unauthorized movement through the hotel's main entrance. A frantic and exhaustive search of the entire hotel yielded no results. No guest or staff member reported seeing anyone matching his description depart. Airport officials were notified, checkpoints were activated, and law enforcement combed through train stations and bus terminals nearby. Yet, the man from Taured had vanished just as mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving behind nothing but an increasing sense of dread. Within official channels, news of the incident spread rapidly, though the general public remained unaware. Too many questions had no answers, and no one wanted the burden of explaining how a man could simply vanish from a locked, guarded room. Internal reports called the situation deeply unsettling and completely without precedent, language that revealed how profoundly it had shaken even the most experienced investigators. Emergency meetings were held behind closed doors. The documentation was stamped confidential, and quietly, officials chose to act as though the man had never existed at all. Years later, individuals connected to the case spoke under strict anonymity and admitted that something far more disturbing surrounded the event than they were ever permitted to publicly acknowledge. Some described eerie sensations that night, a strange feeling of being disoriented, as if reality itself had briefly wavered. Others reported small electrical issues in the hotel, unexplained static on communication radios, even mysterious flickers of light in the hallways. These incidents were initially dismissed as stress-induced illusions, but in hindsight, they seemed far more sinister. The disappearance of the man from Taured wasn't handled like an ordinary case. It was dealt with in silence, methodically, discreetly removed from the official record. No public announcement was made. No missing person alert was ever issued. Instead, the situation was quietly absorbed into a closed network of classified files, buried, hidden by those who couldn't afford to reveal that something impossible had happened on their watch. For years, the story lived only in whispers. Traveler who defied logic, a passport from a non-existent country, a disappearance that left hardened officials questioning everything they knew. Most dismissed it as fiction. A strange tale illustrating how memory and documentation can fail. But then, years later, newly surfaced documents reignited the mystery and brought with them a disturbing revelation. The man from Taured wasn't a fabricated myth. He was real. And the truth of what happened that night was far more horrifying than anyone had imagined. Yes, the man from Taured was very real, and the reality was far darker than we believed. For decades, rumors about the man from Taured floated around in low voices, dismissed by many as merely an exaggerated airport tale or urban legend. Yet behind the scenes, fragments of the truth were being gradually assembled. And when highly classified documents finally leaked into the public domain, the whisperings became concrete and frightening. The reports were unmistakably clear, detailed, and unequivocal in their findings. The man from Taured existed, and the circumstances were far worse than initially believed. The first of these leaked reports came from a confidential file maintained by Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Using dry clinical terms, the incident was labeled an encounter with an unrecognized national entity, and the description fit exactly. A European-looking man arriving at Haneda Airport with fully verifiable documents from a country that didn't appear in any known global records, detailed notes from customs. Officials, carefully preserved, recounted their growing unease as they reviewed layer upon layer of documentation this man presented. The evidence shouldn't have existed, yet it did. But the trail didn't stop there. An internal memo marked "Eyes Only" described a meeting between Japanese authorities and members of an unidentified foreign intelligence service. Its tone was cold and haunting. Anomalous traveler incident confirmed. Subject and related items have ceased to exist under known physical parameters. Further study advised. In essence, the documents confirmed not only the man's presence, but the impossible nature of his disappearance. This was no longer folklore. It was an event logged deep inside classified government records never meant for public release. Further leaks revealed that a handful of scientists connected to university research institutions had been secretly contacted. Their analysis was alarming. One report, written in precise academic language, suggested that the Haneda incident might represent a localized breach between dimensions, an unexplained momentary rupture linking parallel realities. The occurrence was classified as unstable, transient, yet with measurable effects. To simplify, something had opened, and for a brief time, the unreal became reality. The man from Taured was not a scammer or a deluded traveler with counterfeit documents. Every available piece of evidence suggested he was an actual citizen of a world that didn't exist here. And once that slim, interdimensional doorway sealed itself, it took him, and every trace of his existence, back with it. Even more chilling were the annotations following the main reports. Some officials feared the breach wasn't a random fluke. Intelligence sources, still unverified, hinted at strange energy fluctuations detected at the airport during the man's detention. These disturbances couldn't be explained by typical electrical issues or known environmental causes. A small group of researchers warned that what occurred at Haneda might not be a single, isolated anomaly. It could be part of a broader phenomenon, one humanity hadn't yet begun to comprehend, and so the government buried it, deep. The public heard nothing. The files were sealed under top-level national security. People with first-hand knowledge were reassigned, pressured into silence, or subtly, encouraged to forget. Yet, the evidence refused to disappear. The man from Taured was real, and the implications of his existence were more terrifying than anyone could prepare for. He wasn't simply a visitor from a fictional nation. He was proof that the lines we draw between dream and waking life, between what is imagined and what is real, are far thinner and more fragile than we'd ever dared to believe. Some of the scientists involved later shared in private that they feared the event had left invisible scars on the fabric of reality, micro-level tears too small to measure, but impossible to deny. Their warning was grim. If such an event happened, once it could happen again, and next time, it might not be just one man who slips through. In the wake of the incident, amid cover-ups and speculation, the Japanese government acted with urgency to erase all trace of the event. Reports were sealed, airport documents were censored, and those directly involved with the man from Taured vanished from record like he had. Officials were either rotated out of their positions or quietly reassigned to other cities. No public statement was ever issued, and no missing persons bulletin was ever distributed. To the rest of the world, it was as if the man from Taured had never existed. But silence does not erase suspicion. Whispers about the incident continued among airport staff, government clerks, and a select few intelligence operatives involved in the case. Among these circles, unofficial theories began to develop. Some were grounded in logic, while others were more disturbing. The most rational theory suggested the man was part of an advanced forgery operation, possibly a Cold War espionage mission. In this interpretation, Taured was believed to be a code name, and the confusion around his documents was a calculated, test of Japan's border security. Yet even proponents of this idea couldn't explain how the man managed to disappear under surveillance, or why multiple security instruments failed during his detention. The more they tried to frame it with traditional reasoning, the more inconsistencies emerged. Another theory, unsettling but difficult to dismiss, claimed the man may have entered our world by accident. According to this idea, he was a traveler from a parallel Earth, one with slightly different geography, history, and political boundaries. Supporters pointed to the uncanny accuracy of his belongings, a passport aligned with real-world design standards, currencies that matched actual denominations, and personal documents that mirrored authentic formatting, yet referenced institutions that didn't exist. Everything appeared too genuine to be forged, yet too incorrect to be real. Some believed the Haneda incident wasn't unique. Over the years, sporadic reports surfaced, stories of individuals fluent in unidentified languages, maps marking non-existent territories, and mysterious travelers who disappeared shortly after appearing in airports or train stations across the globe. Many of these stories were written off as hoaxes or exaggerations. But those familiar with the Haneda case saw something different, a faint but growing pattern. There were also more ominous theories, shared only in secretive circles. Some insiders believed the man's appearance wasn't accidental at all. They speculated he was a scout, evidence of a larger breach between parallel realities. If left unresolved, they feared such breaches could destabilize the already delicate boundary between worlds. Strange electrical interference, unexplained sensations felt by guards, and the man's sudden disappearance were interpreted as warning signs that reality itself had been temporarily compromised. From this perspective, the government's cover-up wasn't merely about avoiding embarrassment or protecting national pride, it was about preventing mass panic. After all, if the public realized that barriers between worlds could suddenly weaken, and that no authority could prevent it, the resulting chaos could be disastrous. Lacking official confirmation, the event lingered in a murky space between legend and fact. Publicly, the man from Taured was labeled a myth. Privately, those who had seen the original documents knew the truth. Later leaks confirmed what they already believed. The man from Taured had been real. His disappearance wasn't an error, a hoax, or a misunderstanding. It was something much stranger, something the world wasn't prepared to confront. Even today, some of the officials involved reportedly carry a lasting unease. A few have supposedly left cryptic messages in personal memoirs, subtle warnings woven into their writings. These hints suggest that certain boundaries should never be crossed, and certain mistakes should never be repeated. Because once a line between worlds has been breached, once a traveler from an alternate reality has stepped through, it's no longer a question of whether it can happen again, but when. The echoes of Taured still linger in our world. Though the man may have vanished without a trace, the impact he left has not disappeared. In academic circles, the Haneda event became an unofficial case study, discussed quietly in closed-door seminars on theoretical physics and interdimensional theory. Among conspiracy theorists, it stood as evidence that alternate realities were not mere science fiction, but a disturbing and unpredictable truth. And for the general public, it evolved into a chilling tale, an eerie reminder that the stability of our reality might be an illusion. Once skeptical scientists have slowly changed their stance in recent years. Ideas about multiverses, dimensional instability, and quantum anomalies have transitioned from fringe theories to cautious subjects of mainstream inquiry. Researchers investigating the Mandela effect, shared false memories of historical events, sometimes cite the Taured case as an early indication that reality itself may occasionally bend, blur, or leak into other dimensions. Meanwhile, reports continue to emerge, accounts of strange travelers, mysterious maps, and sudden disappearances. While none have reached the same level of documentation or publicity as the Haneda incident, there are enough stories to keep the mystery alive, and to keep fear quietly simmering beneath the surface. If there's one lesson from the tale of the man from Taured, it's that certainty is a fragile illusion. The borders we rely on, national, physical, and even existential, are not as secure as they appear. One moment, a man steps off a plane, fully confident in the nation he calls home. The next, he's in a world where that nation has never existed. A living ghost, lost in a reality that denies his very origin. Perhaps the man from Taured was a one-time anomaly, a temporary rupture in the universe that has since healed. Or perhaps he was just the beginning, a glimpse into a broader, more chaotic truth. That our reality is not fixed, not singular, and certainly not as safe as we like to believe. Somewhere, maybe just out of sight, other travelers may still be searching for a way back. What do you believe truly happened to the man from Taured? Was he a displaced soul from another dimension? Or was his arrival a silent warning of forces we've yet to comprehend? And if reality could slip once, how? Would we even know if it's slipping again? Let us know your theories below. We're listening.